we
All
accomplished.
right, I think we're ready, folks, so
Short amount of
a
time.
call to order the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville for Tuesday, July 10th, 2018, and we'll start with roll call.
Robin Klein.
Here.
Don Francis.
Here.
Barbara Stockhausen.
Here.
Ken Killian.
Here.
Eileen Nichols.
Here.
Stina Sharp.
Here.
Barbara Doss.
Here. First item is consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature of previous discussion. Please indicate to the council president if you would prefer separate discussion and action. A is council minutes from the 6/28/18 special and regular meeting. B is payment of bills. C is a financial report for June. D is appointments to boards and commissions, and this evening I have one appointment, Dick Bonin, to the Plan Commission for a partial term. In your packet, licenses, requests for 1-year and 2-year operator licenses to sell and serve alcohol. And finally, a banner permit for Platteville Dairy Days on August 20th through September 10th. Is there a motion to accept the consent calendar?
I move to approve all items under the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Klein.
Yes.
Francis.
Yes.
Stockhausen.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Sharp.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next is citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any, and we do have one person that we would like to welcome this evening, so if you'd like to come up to the microphone up here and introduce yourself to the public.
Well, hello. Thank you very much for welcoming me this evening. I have been on the job for 1 week and 1 day as the director of the Mining and Rollo Jameson Museums. So it was a real honor to have been selected for the position, and I couldn't be more excited to take on the responsibilities. I'm looking forward to good things to come. Any questions?
Yes. Could you give us a brief synopsis of your history as far as
What's your name? Also.
what you've done related to museum?
Yeah, my name is Eric Flesh. There are a number of Fleshes in Platteville, and we may be related about 100 years ago, but I live in Mineral Point. I have a passion for the driftless area. I'm interested in sort of its, from a natural standpoint, interested in the geology, the topography, the climates and microclimates, and then the different ways of life, the unique ways of life that we've lived upon the ground, not only upon the soil and the plants of the driftless area, but also its rocks and minerals. My background is in architecture and also in geology. Started my career in copper mining and exploration in southern Arizona. But my grandparents' farm is in rural Mineral Point, and I've been very much enjoying meeting everyone in Platteville, getting to know people, and very excited to help, tell the story of the mining history and unique way of life through the collections and the buildings, the campus of the museum. Thank you.
Thank you. The other people who have asked to speak, I'm going to save that for the time that we have information and discussion on the Roundtree Gallery. Okay. So I don't have any requests for anyone else to speak, so we'll go on to reports are in our packet. The museum board, Stockhausen, anything to add?
Nothing to add,
Okay,
other than you met our new director.
yes. Other reports, water and sewer financial report for June, airport financial report for June, and department progress reports. Any questions on any of those reports?
Well, I could ask my question tomorrow, but this is about a July 20th meeting. Was that with MSA?
I have a July 20th meeting with MSA to go over
Results.
results of the phosphorus pilot testing that we just completed down at the wastewater plant.
So is the commission, water and sewer, going to be in on the meeting, or just,
It was planned to be staff only at this point.
okay?
I mean,
Well,
You
it was
can
in
be
this-
there if you'd
it was
like.
in-
It's
In
fine.
this report, and I just remembered it, so.
okay.
I was just curious as to whether water and sewer would get the results at some time.
Yes, they will. I just want to understand and make sure that we understand if there are any limitations or caveats that go with the testing that they did. Some areas it indicated that the microfiltration may have been successful, but it looked like there may be some limitations, and we're going to discuss that in our meeting, just to make sure that we understand what happened and how it happened and things like that.
May be coming to the commission?
And it would come to the commission after
Okay,
that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, anyone? All right, our first action item is ordinance 1808, amending the official traffic map, changing the 15-minute parking to all-day parking on Bonson Street in front of CenturyLink.
Yes. CenturyLink used to be a customer service center. When it was such, we had 15-minute parking in front of the building to support the customer service center. Now they're no longer doing that in that building, so staff is recommending that this block be signed for all day or no overnight parking, no parking 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. For that side of the street, the same as it is across the street next to the park. It looks like there will be 4 stalls created at that location.
Questions, anyone?
Yes. I guess my first question is, what is your plan, overall plan, as far as looking at the park and this area around the park? Because some of it is set off as no parking 3 to 6 a.m. and then it's 3-hour parking 9 to 5:30. So that's generally toward Main Street. In
That's
other words,
correct.
half of the park is no parking 3 to 6, and it's also 3-hour parking 9 to 5:30. But this part that you're proposing now is just no parking 3 to 6, which is not the same as the rest of the park on Bonson.
No,
So you're trying to keep this side as no parking 3 to 6 a.m. and not have this no parking beyond 3 hours, 9 to 5:30? Is that the idea?
what we've done is we've worked with the Downtown Parking Committee and previously with the council, and it was our idea and intent to create the core parking area in the downtown, 1 block north and south of Main Street, to be the 3-hour parking for visitors and customers and things like that. And then parking that was beyond the 1 block either side of Main Street would be longer-term parking, like all-day parking or no parking 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. For employees and other long-term people to park in the downtown area, but not in the Main Street area. And so if you look at Bonson Street, like you were just describing, from Mineral Street to Main Street, we do in fact have that as 3-hour parking during the day and no overnight parking. And then on the north side of Mineral Street, we have it as just the no parking 3 to 6 a.m. Or all-day parking in concert with that plan and the way that we want to approach things.
Okay. So Mineral is 1 block. Okay.
My question was just, can you speak to the CenturyTel lot at all? And that was kind of an overflow parking lot for city park activities and now it's not, or?
The CenturyLink building and parking lot are privately owned by the CenturyLink Corporation. however that is done. But it's privately owned. And they have determined through their corporate legal people that they need to post it as private parking lot for their own purposes, for liability reasons or whatever other reasons that they have. We've talked with them on occasion, and they've said that, you know, on advice of their corporate higher-ups, they cannot allow other parking in there.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't know why the change, if it just, the change of use of building prompted that, so whatever it is, we've lost a bunch of parking right there, so recouping 4 spots might be nice.
Okay. Technically, it never was public parking at
Absolutely,
all.
right, but it practically was used.
I understand that people have used it in the past.
Is CenturyLink actually using the lot, the big lot?
They have work vehicles during the week that use that,
It's private property.
but it's still privately owned property.
Even though the sales office is relocated to La Crosse, there still are technicians that are housed in that building.
We had a technician at our house today working for CenturyLink, or he was from Mineral Point. So I assume he goes back to Mineral Point.
The
Anyway,
city manager is correct. There are technicians that do that. I have people from the office across the street come in on a weekly basis for other things.
All right, so the ordinance is asking to amend the official traffic map. Is there a
I
motion?
make a motion, we adopt ordinance 1808, amending the official traffic map.
second,
Motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Klein,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Sharp,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we're on to information and discussion. First is resolution adopting the Grant County Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan. Update.
A link to the plan was included in my staff report on this topic. I didn't want to kill as many trees as we would have had to have the whole plan in there. This plan is a updated version of the original plan that was created in 2003, updated again in 08 and then 13. Federal requirements are that the city of Platteville and other municipalities adopt a version of this plan in order to remain eligible for FEMA funding in the event of a disaster declaration. This plan is meant to address, as it states, all foreseeable hazards that could occur in the area, man-made or natural disasters, and to create the shell of contingency planning for those events. The fire chief, the EMS director, campus police chief, and I attended a session to kind of further or assist with the updating of this plan, I believe back in March, and that was held out at the EMS building. Like I said, this is something we have adopted previously, and staff recommends that we adopt it again.
Anyone have any questions on that?
I'm just assuming that in the resolution we have has blank lines. I'm assuming that those blank lines will be filled in with City of Platteville.
Great.
But the resolution actually says, whereas the blank.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I make a motion, we adopt.
That's just action, or that's, sorry, the
Oh, that's
information
right.
discussion.
Just not-
information.
So next time you'll
You
have that
can,
filled in.
we'll let you do it next time.
Okay, that's all right.
All right.
Second it for you.
Next is the item, distribution of funds to Friends of Our Gallery.
So, back in, prior to the 2017 budget, the city made some difficult reductions, which included elimination of funds for the Roundtree Gallery and sort of a change in the nature of the relationship with the gallery. It ceased to function as a city board. At that time, we certainly said that we were very supportive of the gallery, and we wanted to do what we could to help them be successful. And we're fortunate that we have continued a successful partnership, both in terms of them renting some space here in City Hall and doing exhibitions at our library. At the time that the city was eliminated as a city board, we still held some funds on their behalf, and we continued to hold those funds. Included some monies from donations and some trust money from the binding trust, both Carmen and Eva. And we asked at the time, as the gallery was getting organized, that for us to feel comfortable releasing those funds, that we wanted to make sure that their nonprofit status was fully documented and that they had an appropriate governance structure in place, including officers and operating bylaws. And we believe that they've met the conditions that we had originally discussed with them. Our understanding is that they have kind of a new and exciting plan, potentially for their future. So they are looking at this time for the release of those funds so that they can begin to continue to pursue their new vision. And I know that Nancy Collins, are you the president now or still acting? Okay. Nancy Collins, the president of the Friends of Our Gallery, is available to share some of those ideas or envision with the council.
All right, we do have a number of people who have registered in favor of this request, so I'm going to read the names, and then actually Bill Mitchell is the one who wrote down that he was going to speak. Okay, so the ones who registered in favor are Will LeSueur, Katie Shute, Marilyn Gottschalk, Rock Riedel, Nancy Collins, Amanda Hickok, and Mark Eim. And so, Bill Mitchell, if you would like to come up to the microphone, please give your name and your address. And
my name is Bill Mitchell. I live at 8249 Buckwheat Ridge Road in Lancaster. Obviously, I'm a member of FOG and the Roundtree Gallery, and I'm here to advocate for the transfer of the funds to us so that we can further the mission of both FOG and the gallery, which is 39 years old this year. And given the situation we're in a bit of a chicken and egg situation in terms of we don't have a space, we have a limited current budget, but we've got a lot of energy, and we've got a plan for not only business and funding with some help from a professor at the university. My wife and I have also committed to helping the gallery secure a space, if possible, by purchasing one for the gallery to rent at a discounted deferred rent for a certain period of time. And we're working it out as basically 2020 to develop a funding plan to have our gallery moving towards some sort of ability to pay that rent on the property we would purchase and we would fix up. None of these funds at all would go towards capital improvements on a building we might purchase. They would only be used for limited operating expenses. I mean, our goal is to have a space where we can then fundraise, show that we are really serious, start getting people in shows in, and hopefully build up our donor base that way. Also have things like events, theater, poetry, really a community art space, a cultural center. And so that's what our goal is. We view these funds as something that we don't want to use for operating expenses if we can't. And like I said, we have a limited time to prove to ourselves that we can do this, and that's 2020. And if we can't, then we have to revisit how that all works and what would happen in terms of the gallery from there. The substantial amount of money I think we've all agreed on and voted last night was going to go into the Southwest Community Trust and an endowment, and that would be part of our funding mechanism as well. And so I'm relatively new to Platteville. I've only lived here or this area for 6 years. I'm very excited about the energy we have going on in the gallery, and I think we really need a place for local artists, students, just people who want to walk in and maybe make a piece of art, professional artists, to really set us apart culturally in Platteville. I think we're just lacking in the visual arts and the performing arts in terms of our community, not aside from the university.
This would be a gallery on Main Street in Platteville. That's your goal?
We are looking at a couple of different properties, but yeah, ideally on Main Street. We have a certain property in mind, but one of the contingencies that, frankly, that my wife and I have was that we would need to have the gallery demonstrate some funds to be able to pay us a deferred rent for at least through 2020. We're willing to pay some of the rent. We're willing to do all the fix-up on the building. And we're doing this if it weren't for the gallery, we wouldn't be interested in the building. So it's not about a real estate investment. It's more about trying to be an impetus and to contribute to our community. And we kind of see an opportunity with the gallery to have sort of losing its funding and losing its space, and then kind of floundering around. The library's great, and we're super appreciative of the library and the banks that are showing the work, but it isn't a coalesced community space where I think we can really build on.
So, Bill, you're an artist too. So, do you want to just kind of touch briefly on your like background in art and how this is gonna like I don't know. There's a question in there. There is. Hold on. How it's not about yourself. No, how this connects to you personally. And how, you stand behind this.
I am an artist. I have an MFA in painting from Northern Illinois University. I lived in Chicago for 20 years, and for a good dozen of those years, I was showing in galleries. I worked for Oscar Friedel Gallery. I worked for Kavi Gupta's gallery. So I have some actual professional gallery experience. But I also own a small business too, so I've got some business experience. When I stopped making fine art for a number of years, I was a landscape designer, and that was, really bringing business and creativity together. I still do make furniture and those kinds of things as part of my business, but I am moving back into making more fine art, so I have a personal interest in the gallery as well from that regard, not just from a community standpoint.
You have a lot of qualifications, it sounds like, which is exciting. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, the endowment, what is going to be the use of the endowment? Is that to give out funds to artists and so forth? What, you're putting in the money into the Southwest community people,
Right.
and so what is the benefit to you?
To me personally?
No, the gallery.
Oh, well,
The whole
I think
setup
Will can
here.
speak to a little bit of the numbers on this, but the endowment pays dividends. So we put the money into the endowment, and the endowment pays dividends. And as I also understand it, and I wasn't at the meeting with the endowment folks, but as I also understand, people donate to this whole endowment, and sometimes they just donate to the whole thing, and everyone gets a little bit more. And so the idea is you have an endowment, you have this gallery you're building, this community space, and it's a place where you can encourage people to donate to. And as you build up the endowment, you also build up what your dividend is. So Angie and I, as my wife's perspective was, we just want to get a basic rent for the building, and as the gallery makes more than that, that's great. We don't want anything more than that. So our idea is to have the gallery be able to support itself in perpetuity through funding mechanisms that might be part retail, it might be money from the endowment, it might be donor base, it might be all those things together.
And so the benefit from the community fund is that you earn more interest? Is that more interest?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, are you going to give us an idea as to how much money is going to go into the endowment? You have a total here of $58,000, $59,000.
I don't think we've voted on exactly the amount. We did vote that we were going to work with the endowment last night. I will say the understanding that my wife and I put forth with the gallery before we would move forward on possibly making an offer on a property would be that the gallery needed to pay $550 a month rent for the remainder of this year, so whenever it's a rentable property, and then next year they would pay $650 a month. I think all of that totaled about $15,000 with phone, electric, And that's our limit. That was our limit. If we don't have a viable plan at that point, then we have to stop. You know, we don't want to use that money for capital or for operating expenses.
Next
That's our goal.
question I have is the endowment funds. Will you, as a group, be deciding the use of the endowment funds?
Yes, we have to vote on that.
And secondly, the question, will you be deciding the amount?
The group will.
Selection,
Yes,
the amount.
yes.
And then this came up with the Freudenreich Fund. Will you be allowed to use funds in larger amounts? In other words, is there going to be a requirement as far as how much you can use?
Beyond,
A limit for, say, a project. Is there a limit? You have not worked that out yet with the Southwest community? You have no write-up yet, no contract with them yet?
we've had contact with them, but I don't think we have settled on any sort of, Will was at the meeting. He has more information on that.
Will that be coming at the next meeting?
I'm not sure I can speak to that.
Pardon?
I can speak to it today if you'd like.
Yes, I'd like to know.
This is the,
That was one of the questions as far as with the Freudenreich Fund,
I had to recuse.
how much money could be used. In other words, if you have a project that's, say, significant, a larger amount, will you be able to get the larger?
I'd like to know what you're doing with the binding trusts.
May I approach the mic?
Yes, you may approach the mic, please. Give your name and your address. Thank you.
Not quite as tall. Hello, my name is Dr. Will Lesueur. My address is 630 North Water Street here in Platteville, Wisconsin. I am a member of the Friends of Our Gallery and not an artist in any way, shape, or form. However, my spouse is a professional artist. I was asked to attend the meeting with Wyatt Jackson, the president of the CFSW, and with Linda Gebhardt as well. I have a background a bit in math and understand it a little bit. We have, as you said, about $59,000 currently controlled by the city that we're requesting back. After talking with Mr. Jackson and Ms. Gebhardt, the current recommendation from them is to place the bulk of the money into a spendable funds, so that in the first year and a half here, where we are trying to find and establish ourselves as an independent gallery, we have more access to liquid funds. And then upon finding our footing, if you will, to set up a permanent endowment. The endowments, according to Mr. Jackson and Ms. Gebhardt, have about an 8% return on average, though in the past year or so it was more in the 15% range. 4% is paid out in dividends, 2% goes to costs, operation costs, by the CFSW, and then about 2% is reinvested to increase the endowment to then generate more dividends in the future. CFSW itself is a 501c3 and makes fairly minimal, they keep their overhead low because of that. For the most part, the endowment, if an endowment is set up, then it is untouchable essentially. And we would set up contract language so that should the Roundtree Gallery cease to exist, that the terms of that endowment are changed, but into the spirit of the binding trust. The main reason that Mr. Jackson had originally suggested that we keep the funds liquid is because of the turnaround time. And because once it's in the endowment, it can only be paid on dividends. You can't touch that money in any way. Whereas for the spendable funds, there's two types he talked about, and he recommended they're moving to a treasury bonds model, where there's a rolling system where they pay out into their own account of essentially liquid money. That makes about 3 to 5% a year, and with a week's notice, they can then disperse money to us for purchases such as track lighting or hanging equipment or any other things we need to set up our gallery. Initially, we would be working mostly on a volunteer basis and simply working to set up the gallery. The other really nice thing about working with CFSW, I've been struggling with that acronym, they handle their taxes for us for the most part. because they themselves are a 501c3. However, we'd maintain our own EIN and our own 501c3 status. And they also have software and dedicated staff to handle fundraising. In addition to the general donor efforts that they gather, that if we wish to ask them to, say, stuff envelopes and do a mailing, they would charge us cost of literal paper and stamps and nothing more. And so part of their nonprofit mission is to help other nonprofits. And he explained a little more on the financial side about how they do their funding models and stuff. But for us, we are looking to invest that money to take a bold step forward to make ourselves independent. And as Bill explained, we have until about January 2020 to get our feet under us. We're working with Dr. Leon in the business department, Victor, and he's going to have intern students help us develop a business plan model, as well as, or I guess better is sustainable funding model, because we're not a profit business, so that we can then become a stable entity on our own.
Either of you speak to the binding donation in and of itself and
Sure.
whether it had stipulations to it?
My understanding is that the stipulations were fairly broad, that the money be used for children's art and art education. Is that about right? Thank you. As it currently stands, we are not able, without a space, to even fulfill that mission very well at the library. We have been trying to do some of that with some of the community room space at the library. However, art is rather messy, and libraries are not always amenable to mess, very understandably so. We truly feel that we can better serve the mission of the endowment or the trust, the binding trust, by creating a space, a cultural center space, an art center space here in Platteville.
If I could maybe just add on to that, the Binding Trust specifically identified the Roundtree Gallery for these funds with the simple description that this gentleman gave. So one of the things that is not in your packet because of the city attorney's schedule is that there would be a transfer agreement that basically says that rather than us shepherding those funds, or because the gallery used to be part of us, that basically we would part of their obligation if they take these funds is that they're assuming the responsibility for using the funds in a manner that is consistent with the trust's intent. And we did reach out to the executor of the trust and touch base with her to see if she thought this would match the desires of Eva in particular. And she was very, very comfortable with the idea.
A general question for a number of people. Doing
Yeah.
part of City Hall, and one of the things in City Hall is a gallery. Now, what is the status of the gallery in City Hall? Is this, if you have a place on Main Street, does this become then an issue not important to us as far as having a gallery here at City Hall?
I can't speak to City Hall. As Roundtree Gallery is now independent and no longer part of the City Council, we are trying to establish ourselves as a standalone entity in that way because we are no longer part of the budget, if I understand correctly.
And I would also comment on that, and most of my conversations have actually been with Nancy Collins, but we developed two options for City Hall specifically, not knowing the future of Roundtree Gallery, but again, because we felt we wanted to see them be successful, there is an option that would have included the gallery in this building, but if they are able to find a different space that will make them even more successful, then we have that other plan, which was shared with the council, that would use that space basically as meeting room space.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah. One, I just want to express my support and really excited that you're group has gathered some more really capable people to the party. So that's really exciting. And then you mentioned something about if someone wanted to walk in and make a piece of art. So that's what really piques my interest is I want to know if there's going to be a pottery wheel for my kids to play on, or how messy does this look? You know, in your first phase application, are you looking to be able to sell art? Are you looking to create a space where artists come and commune? What would be priority?
I think our brainstorm sessions are probably messier than any art you can make at this point. We've gone from maker spaces to kind of making your own, painting your own greenware type things, using recyclables to allow students or children to make kind of fun art where they are. We spent about an hour at the last meeting just brainstorming with ideas, and I think the general consensus is to create a community space that is not just a gallery, but really an art center. And not just a place to show professional art, but to celebrate all art. And I think that would include what you're talking about, the more messy type. But Bill can probably speak better to that.
I think one of the ideas that's been kicking around a lot is to have art materials on hand, and you can come in and grandparents got the kids during the summertime and they want to just bring them over and not make a mess in their house. We have supplies there. Maybe charge $5 or $10 or whatever, just ask for donation, something, so that's where people go to do that kind of thing. And then we're talking about things like, as we've been talking and with people at the university, things like, sip and paint and date night for painting pottery. Those things are really, really popular right now. And I know, talking to Daniel O'Brien at the university, he was saying students were asking him to come do that at the dorms, which is cool, but they could come do it at the gallery and it'd be even better. So, things like that is what we're, aside from having shows and doing the, student shows we've been doing the professional art shows that are up, now at the library, parts of the permanent collection, just general tri-state area artists supporting their work too. So I think all those things come together to what this is, our vision is going to be.
All right, any other questions or comments from the council?
I was reading your bylaws, and I was just looking at the election of officers, and it says they're supposed to be elected in May, and you're having an election July 9th. Is that just kind of an oversight that it's late this year?
I'm not really sure. I think somebody resigned and we had to fill that in. So we had a president that couldn't be there for other obligations. So we had an acting president that we just elected the other night. So
You'll be going back to the May election.
yes, we'll be sticking to the bylaws. Yeah.
All right, anyone else have questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you all.
All right, next item for information discussion is the Guest Wireless Network in Legion Park and the Platteville Family Aquatic Center.
Yes, so you may remember about a month ago, the city met with the PCAN group, the Platteville Community Area Network. At that meeting, it was discussed ways that we could look at expanding the wireless network throughout the city. This is the free network that people can connect to. And at the most recent meeting of PCAN, PCAN approved to install fiber out to Legion Park at a cost of roughly $5,000. That would be contingent on the city providing equipment and providing the hookup to the network at that location so that it could be made into a public network. We did receive a quote from CompuNet for that work. The total cost for that would be $3,260.50. I did price check some of that just to see if it was in the ballpark, and the pieces of equipment that I looked up just on Amazon were cheaper from CompuNet than they would have been from purchasing on Amazon. So I believe that is a good quote. However, we may want to look into alternates, but I also have to look into whether, because CompuNet manages our network, whether that's a possibility or not. While looking at doing that, I also suggested that perhaps this would be a good use of our equipment that has been donated from the Roundtree Hall. We received some indoor equipment that would not be compatible with Legion Park, but would allow us to add a guest network at the Platteville Family Aquatic Center. And the cost for that, because we already have fiber, we already have equipment, would just be setup time. And CompuNet provided a quote for that he provided a rough quote, between $300 and $400, he thought, for setting up the network there. So what we are proposing is looking at tackling one or both of those locations. Staff would recommend both of those locations using park impact fees. For those new to the council, park impact fees are fees collected when new construction takes place in town. They can only be spent on new amenities in our parks and recreation facilities. Right now we have $107,000 roughly in that account. And this would be an expense that would be meet the criteria in there. So there's only very certain, we can't use it to renovate or put in a new playground, or it has to be something new that can be justified because we have a growing population. We now have a demand for wireless in our parks, which I think is a reasonable statement. So we are looking at pulling the money from there, so it wouldn't change our overall budget outlook. It would just be asking you to approve that expense from that account.
It would be a budget amendment, but it would be equal revenue from the park impact fees and then the expense of the equipment and installation, so yeah.
Fair enough.
Questions, anyone?
I know I appreciate the wireless in City Park, and I'm sure that people will appreciate this.
All right, thank you. The last item under information is 2018 city goals, second quarter update.
As is our practice, we're providing you with a quarterly update on our annual goals. I don't have anything specific to say. I would just note that since we were talking about the gallery tonight, that we had in our goals the targeted areas where we were doing some restructuring. It was part of a 2-year 2017-2018 process, and we have really completed all of our targets with respect to that restructuring. So that's a pretty significant accomplishment.
What's in the packet? Anybody have any questions or comments?
I do. I know that we're involved in the housing study. I forgot the time when we're expecting something back.
We're expecting some preliminary results in early September so that we would have it in time for our CIP process. We probably won't get the final report until the end of October.
Anyone else have questions or comments? All right, seeing none, that concludes our information and discussion, so
Move to adjourn.
Second.
we'll vote.
Klein?
That was me.
Klein?
Yes.
Oh, Francis?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes,
Sharp?
Yes.
Doss?
Yes.
Motion carries.
thanks, everybody.
She's